A girl from the North Side? I asked, incredulous. He rolled over and faced me, anger in his eyes, and a kind of despair, too. What's the matter with that? Think she's too good for me? He asked. I'm warning you, Jerry, if you tell anybody. Don't worry, I said. Love had no particular place in my life. It seemed an unnecessary waste of time, and a girl from the North Side was so remote that for all practical purposes she did not exist. But I was curious. What are you writing her a letter for? Did she leave town or something? She hasn't left town, he answered. I wasn't going to send it. I just felt like writing to her. I was glad that I had never become involved with love. Love that brought desperation to your eyes, that caused you to write letters you did not plan to send. Shrugging with indifference, I began to search in the closet for the old baseball glove. I found it on the shelf, under some old sneakers. The webbing was torn and the padding gone. I thought of the sting I would feel when a sharp grounder slapped into the glove, and I winced. You tell anybody about me and Sally, and I know, you'll muckalize me. I did not divulge his secret, and often shared his agony, particularly when he sat at the supper table and left his mother's special butterscotch pie untouched. I had never realized before how terrible love could be. But my was short-lived because I had other things to worry about. Report cards due at Easter time. The loss of income from old Mrs. Belander, who had gone to live with a daughter in Boston, and of course the President's. Because a stalemate had been reached, the President cards were the dominant force in our lives. Mine, Roger Lucier's, and Roly Tremaine's. For 3 weeks, as the baseball season approached, each of us had a complete set. Complete except for one President, Grover Cleveland. Each time a box of cards arrived at the store, we hurriedly bought them, as hurriedly as our funds allowed, and tore off the wrappers, only to be confronted by James Monroe or Martin Van Buren or someone else. But never Grover Cleveland, never the man who had been the 22nd and the 24th President of the United States. We argued about Grover Cleveland. Should he be placed between Chester Alan Arthur and Benjamin Harrison as the 22nd President, or did he belong between Benjamin Harrison and William McKinley as the 24th President? Was the card company playing fair? Roger Lucier brought up a horrifying possibility. Did we need 2 Grover Clevelands to complete the set? Indignant, we stormed Lemaire's and protested to the harassed store owner, who had long since vowed never to stock a new series. Muttering angrily, he searched his bills and receipts for a list of the rules. All right, he announced. Says here you only need 1 Grover Cleveland to finish the set. Now get out, all of you, unless you've got money to spend. Outside the store, Roly Tremaine picked up an empty tobacco tin and scaled it across the street. Boy, he said, I'd give $5 for a Grover Cleveland. When I returned home, I found Armand sitting on the piazza step, his chin in his hands. His mood of dejection mirrored my own, and I sat down beside him. We did not say anything for a while. Want to throw the ball around? I asked. He sighed, not bothering to answer. You sick? I asked. He stood up and hitched up his trousers, pulled at his ears, and finally told me what was the matter. There was a big dance next week at the high school, the spring promenade, and Sally had asked him to be her escort. I shook my head at the folly of love. Well, what's so bad about that? How can I take Sally to a fancy dance? He asked desperately. I have to buy her a corsage, and my shoes are practically falling apart. Pa's got too many worries now to buy me new shoes or give me money for flowers for a girl. I nodded in sympathy. Yeah, I said. Look at me. Baseball time is almost here, and all I've got is that old glove, and no Grover Cleveland card yet. Grover Cleveland? He asked. They've got some of those up on the north side. Some kid was telling me there's a store there that's got them. He says they're looking for Warren G. Harding. Holy smoke, I said. I've got an extra Warren G. Harding. Pure joy sang in my veins. I ran to my bicycle, swung into the seat, and found that the front tire was flat. I'll help you fix it, Armand said. Within half an hour I was at the North Side drugstore, where several boys were matching cards on the sidewalk. Silently but blissfully I shouted, President Grover Cleveland, here I come! After Armand had left for the dance all dressed up as if it were Sunday, the small green box containing the corsage under his arm, I sat on the railing of the piazza, letting my feet dangle. The neighborhood was quiet because the Frenchtown Tigers were at the Daggett's field, practicing for the first baseball game of the season. I thought of Armand and the ridiculous expression on his face when he stood before the mirror in the bedroom. I'd avoid looking at his new black shoes. "Love," I muttered. Spring had arrived in a sudden stampede of apple blossoms and fragrant breezes. Windows had been thrown open and dust mops had banged on the seals all day long as the women busied themselves with house cleaning. I was puzzled by my lethargy. Wasn't spring supposed to make everything bright and gay? I turned at the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Roger Lizier greeted me with a sour face. "I thought you were practicing with the Tigers," I said. "Rollie Tremaine," he said. I couldn't stand him. He slammed his fist against the railing. "Geez, why did he have to be the one to get a Grover Cleveland? You should see him showing off. He won't let anybody even touch that glove." I felt like Benedict Arnold and knew that I had to confess what I had done. "Roger," I said, "I got the Grover Cleveland card up on the north side. I sold it to Rollie Tremaine for $5. "Are you crazy?" he asked. "I needed that $5. It was an emergency." "Boy," he said, looking down at the ground and shaking his head, "what did you have to do a thing like that for?" I watched him as he turned away and began walking down the stairs. "Hey, Roger," I called. He squinted up at me as if I were a stranger, someone he'd never seen before. "What?" he asked, his voice flat. "I had to do it," I said. "Honest." He didn't answer. He headed toward the fence, searching for the board we had loosened to give us a secret passage. I thought of my father and Armand and Rollie Tremaine and Grover Cleveland and wished that I could go away someplace far away, but there was no place to go. Roger found the loose slat in the fence and slipped through. I felt betrayed. Weren't you supposed to feel good when you did something fine and noble? A moment later, 2 hands gripped on the top of the fence and Roger's face appeared. "Was it a real emergency?" he yelled. "A real one," I called. "Something important." His face dropped from sight and his voice reached me across the field. "All right. See you tomorrow," I yelled. I swung my legs over the railing again. The gathering dusk began to soften the sharp edges of the fence, the rooftops, the distant church steeple. I sat there a long time, waiting for the good feeling to come.